Why Empress Elisabeth of Austria is living proof that fairy tales do not exist. Hello guys, welcome to another video. In this video I want to make an analysis into the life of one of the most influential historical figures of the 19th century from one of the most influential families in Europe, the Hapsburgs. I want to look at her life because recently her life has been the topic of a new series that came out on Netflix called The Empress, which is actually quite a good series. But I want to talk about this because, one, the issue of fairy tale is directly linked to propaganda, and I just made an analysis on my other channel, the Daily Archive, where I looked into the use of fairy tale for war propaganda during the previous century. Now, the reason why I want to make this video is because it's very easy for people that are just now consuming media about Sissy, that's her nickname, Sissy. It's easy for them to get lost into the idea that fairy tales exist and fairy tales are real. And before anyone says that the audience knows that her life is not a fairy tale simply because it has problems, character development, and a major villain, her mother-in-law, Archduchess Sophie, the mind operates into a subconscious level where Elizabeth's life, as portrayed by the media, fulfills perfectly the description of a fairy tale. And that is because, as argued by Russian folklore specialist Vladimir Prop, fairy tale is composed of ups and downs, where in the end, the hero, which is the main character, rises to victory. The collective subconscious of humanity is used to hearing fairy tales. This is a reality for people all over the world. They grow up hearing fairy tales with stories with happy ending and the princess marrying the prince, all these beautiful things. And this can shift the perception of reality of a child and an adult. Now, this has been proved by studies that were done in the area of psychology and the use of fairy tales, the impact fairy tales have on the minds not only of children but also adults, and fairy tales throughout history they have been considered as an initiation ritual into the life that is expected for the child through the roles that are given into a fairy tale story. Again, you can watch the in-depth analysis I've done on the Daily Archive. I'm going to leave the link below. Now on to the topic of this video. First, let's talk a little bit about contemporary fairy tale propaganda, because as a woman, I grew up watching Disney movies about princesses, and I believe most of us have because Disney started making these movies in the 1930s. These stories are actually much older than that, but Disney was the one that popularized these movies, where you can see the concept of a woman meeting a prince and becoming this fairy tale story all over mainstream media. So movies came out in the 1930s about it. The 1950s are the ones that are most known, which used actress Romy Schneider, that became just known as Empress Elisabeth because of this trilogy. And if you look at the movies, they really give you this vibe that her life was the ultimate fairy tale, and many women watched this and identified with their long life dream of meeting a wealthy prince that would take them to live in a castle. Now, most recently, we've seen the Netflix series that is now season 2. In between the 1950s and now, we had more movies coming out. And if you do visit Vienna in Austria, you're going to see all kinds of mementos that are linked to Sissy, to Empress Elisabeth. So Elisabeth was this figure that she popularized the Habsburgs in current times, even though she existed 150 years ago. That's fascinating, isn't it? And that's all thanks to the use of media and propaganda and the idea that her life was the ultimate fairy tale. But I'm here to demystify this today and explain if her life is not the ultimate fairy tale, then it just means that fairy tales do not exist, because she had everything to live the ultimate fairy tale. Now let's go on to the reality into her life. Now, for this video, I have used this book, which in my opinion is the best biography about Empress Elisabeth. It's called The Reluctant Empress. I'm gonna leave the name of this book in the description of this video. So Elizabeth of Austria, imagine this, she was 15 years old. She already came from a wealthy family. She was already a duchess, right? So far, perfect background. Now, the prince, or the emperor, Franz Joseph, he's 23 years old, young, and propaganda says he was tall, but actually, no, he was short, but we're gonna get into this another time. He meets her at a very kind of social situation where his birthday is being celebrated and his mom comes and tells him he needs to find a wife. Now, the wife his mom chose for him was Elizabeth's sister, right? But then when Franz Joseph sees Elizabeth, he's so enamored, he's so in love, that he faces up to his mother and he says, it's either her or nobody else. Right there, we already have the perfect romantic beginning for a fairy tale story where the dashing emperor decides and chooses the woman he fell in love with to be his future wife and faces against the establishment to make this decision. Elizabeth, she didn't know what was going on, but as she said herself, you cannot say no to an emperor, right? So she accepted. And as she's 16 years old, she gets married and becomes the Empress of Austria. Now, picture this. The year is 1856. And in those days, the Habsburgs were seen as godlike emperors. They were the ultimate family. They were untouchable. So to be married into that family, that was exactly what Disney princess movies are like. You have the emperor with his dashing uniform, which served as inspiration for the uniform of princess in other Disney movies. So he's there, young, attractive, that's what is said by the media, found his wife, fell in love with her and is married to her. And now she, during their wedding celebration, which was gigantic, it was full of pomp, as it would be expected, she becomes the empress. Not only that, they marry and straight away she's producing heirs with this union. So from the outside, the people who had no idea what was going on the inside, they looked at this and they thought her life was the ideal fairy tale, which is what pushed media in the last century to produce all these movies and cement even further into the minds of the people that she and her life were the ultimate fairy tale. But when we study what happens at the end of Happily Ever After, we realize this was not the reality at all. Elizabeth was very ill-suited to be Empress of Austria. She came from a background that was just not made for this. She did not receive the proper training one would expect a future empress would receive. Therefore, there was a lot of contrast in the courts in Vienna. She clashed with Viennese society. She didn't fit in. She just wasn't made for this role. And therefore, her entire life up until her death in 1895, if I'm not mistaken, but please correct me in the comments, but she did die at the end of the 1800s by assassination attempt that was done by someone that was meant to even kill somebody else. But that's not the point of the story, right? The point of the story is this. Up until that point, her life had everything to be this perfect fairy tale because her husband was deeply enamored with her. He was deeply in love and he done pretty much all her wishes. So what went wrong? What went wrong is that she simply was not suited to be Empress of Austria. And because of this, because she had the wrong background, she had the wrong ideas and the wrong goals in mind, it just did not go well. She ended up not even being in Vienna most of the time. She was out, she was traveling, she spent a lot of time out of Vienna, which was improper for the Empress. She didn't attend many of the events she had to attend next to her husband. She didn't give him the support he needed during crises that were happening in the Habsburg Empire. And some might even say that her being the Empress actually led to the downfall of the Habsburgs, because she pushed for a dual monarchy between Austria and Hungary, which was something that's the first time the Habsburgs are really seen as, you know what, maybe they're not that powerful, maybe they're not that godlike, because Hungary, that at that time wasn't that relevant part of the empire, managed to have its own monarchy thanks to Sissy's efforts and her passion for Hungary that actually came from the fact that she disliked the Viennese court so much that she ended up favoring the Hungarians. But the point here is this. This is a person that had everything to live a perfect fairy tale life. She came from a rich and privileged background. She was very young, beautiful girl that caught the eye of the emperor, the most eligible bachelor at the time. She married him, she became the empress, she got all the pomp and ceremony. She produced the heirs that she needed. She had all the money in the world, she had all the opportunities, all the resources in the world. And still, her life was sad. She was obsessed with her looks. She even stopped allowing people to photograph and paint her after her 30s because that's how obsessed she was with getting old. She did not have a happy relationship with the local Viennese court. She didn't even have that happy a marriage with her dashing emperor husband. Not only that, we've seen the tragedy that happened with her son and heir, Rudolf, that ended up taking his own life, and we see that she was very unhappy towards the end of her life. If her life didn't end up being the fairy tale everyone expected and the media portrays it was, then truly we know that fairy tales do not exist. Now I hope you have enjoyed this video, and my goal is to bring more and more content linked to royal families of Europe, but also topics linked to my PhD, which is propaganda. So don't forget to check the channel, the Daily Archive, where I do some more propaganda-focused content, and everything is academic research, so there's no going wrong with that. Thank you very much. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment on this video, and wish you all a great day.